Hey, how much of your dad's inheritance am I gonna get? My husband callously tossed these greed-filled words over my shoulder. It was just after the funeral of my only family member, my father, who had died suddenly. Without offering any consolation to me in my grief, my husband casually started talking about money. My father was a famous lawyer who often appeared in the media, and he must have earned a considerable amount. In the beginning, my husband and I got along well, and he never showed any desire for my father's status or wealth. However, within a few months, he started behaving strangely. He stopped doing household chores, slacked at work, and began receiving poor evaluations from his company. He spent every night out drinking, often showing up at work hungover, and eventually, he even started taking unauthorized absences. I guess he was complacent because of my father's money. Now, with my father's death, he had finally shown his true colors. His attitude, trampling on my sadness and my feelings for the deceased, filled me with a sorrow so intense I wanted to scream, along with a deep, rising anger. Lying face down on the bed, I didn't even look at him as I said, "There's no inheritance. I was my late mother's stepchild. I'm not a real family member, so I can't inherit anything. $0. My husband's face turned pale. Lies. A stepchild? What's that about? I've never heard such a thing. As I spoke calmly, he suddenly yelled so loudly it echoed through the room. You tricked me. I was expecting an inheritance since your father was a famous lawyer. Marrying an ugly hag like you was a waste. I'm gonna divorce you right away. He yelled furiously, smashing everything on the table to the floor. Stuffed animals from our pair, our wedding photo in its frame, a mirror we bought on a trip, all our memories shattered into pieces with loud noises. Was this the true feeling of the man I loved and shared so many happy times with when we first met? Mixed feelings of disappointment and disillusionment overwhelmed me, and I collapsed, powerless. I couldn't let my husband see the uncontainable smile. My name is Taylor. I'm 36 years old and work for a cosmetics manufacturer. My husband's name is John. He's 5 years younger than me, and we met at an Spanish conversation class. My husband and I both work in sales for different companies, and we are restudying Spanish to keep up with the recent globalization. My father, a famous lawyer who frequently appeared in the media, was known as Must Consult Smith Attorney. His sales and assets appeared to be quite substantial. Since my family was never featured in the media, my existence wasn't widely known, but still, many people around me, neighbors, acquaintances, friends, and colleagues, often talked about my father. With my father being wealthy, many misunderstood that I was financially comfortable and approached me for money. By my 20s, I was already fed up with this situation. I had a few boyfriends by then, but all of them were ultimately after my father's wealth, asking to be introduced to him or expecting financial support if we got married. It was always about my father. No one saw me for who I am. John, who aggressively pursued me when I was feeling this way, always talked about our French lessons or daily life. He never brought up my father, and when we talked about our families, he acted normally. Maybe he didn't know about my father. He always seemed genuinely happy talking to me, and we enjoyed simple pleasures like dining at reasonably priced restaurants and going to theme parks, like any normal couple. Just being with Taylor makes me really happy. Seeing your smile beside me fills me with joy. I respect you for not slacking off in work, hobbies, or self-improvement. In John's apartment, as we shared a delivered pizza, he said to me, "I want to enjoy lots of things with you. Would you go out with me?" I had gradually opened my heart to him over our dates, and his words warmed my heart. This man sees me. With him, we can support each other in life. Tears blurred my vision, and the pizza in my mouth tasted suddenly salty but somehow sweet. Thank you. I'm also very happy with you. Yes, I'd like that. John tenderly supported my back as I couldn't stop crying. He never took me to fancy restaurants counting on my money, nor did he ever show any interest in valuing my house like appraising it. Finally, I found simple happiness in our small apartments, sharing easy meals or a delivery pizza. Filled with a sense of security, I instinctively hugged him. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and he never showed any interest in my family home. After 3 years of a perfectly normal relationship, we were engaged. Of course, if we were getting married, we had to meet each other's parents. I was pretty nervous about inviting him to my family home. Since he seemed unaware of who my father was, I feared he might be scared away. When my father came to meet us in the living room and introduced himself, John was shocked. "Wait, are you the Must Consult Smith attorney who appears on TV every week?" John's mouth fell open in surprise, and my father laughed heartily. "Haha. Yes, that's me. You're the first to date my daughter without knowing that. What a surprise!" John apologized profusely, bowing to my father. "I'm sorry. I was clueless. Taylor never told me properly. I haven't taken her to nice places on our dates. I apologize for being rude to both your daughter and you." My father, with an unceasing smile, reassured him. "It's okay. You're dating and marrying my daughter, not me. Her life is hers. Don't worry about me. What's important is that you two support each other and have a life where you both feel happy." My father's demeanor, calm yet dignified, reflected his life experiences as a lawyer handling various challenging cases and his extensive media work. His profound humanity was palpable. Inspired by my father's words, John's eyes sparkled, and he straightened his back. "Yes, I might not reach your level of success, being younger and less reliable, but I'll do my best to make your daughter happy." My father looked at us warmly. And a few months later, we had our wedding and registered our marriage. Despite some relatives saying the wedding was modest for a famous lawyer's daughter, it was our wish to have a small, lovely ceremony with close family. We moved to an apartment to start our married life. We lived modestly and happily together. We both quit our Spanish conversation classes to save money, but I've been practicing my Spanish through work projects with overseas clients. John, seemingly unchanged, continued to work diligently in sales. I wondered what kind of life we would lead together. I wanted to travel and someday have children. I was looking forward to a happy future. I thought about this. But I began to wonder if I was the only one with these thoughts. A few months into our marriage, I started to notice a change in John's behavior. At first, John used to diligently help with household chores during nights and weekends, but recently, he doesn't even bother to take care of his own stuff. He leaves his clothes strewn about, his dirty dishes on the table instead of in the sink. Before, he would have promptly gone shopping when we ran out of everyday items, but now he just roughly tells me, "Hey, we're out of milk." What surprised me the most was his reckless spending. He used to be frugal, only splurging on Spanish classes for self-improvement. And he chose affordable places to eat and hang out. The joy was special when he splurged a bit on anniversaries. But now, he casually buys expensive watches and books reservations at fancy 3-star restaurants, places we've never even been to together, even when it's not a special occasion. When I confronted him about his spending, saying, "I understand wanting to indulge, but are we okay money-wise?" he just shrugged it off with, "I'm married now. I gotta live it up a bit, right?" Even when I warned him about saving for our future children and how his extravagant spending was troubling, his response was too carefree, "It'll be fine. We'll figure it out." I was frustrated with his irresponsible attitude. And then came the winter bonus season. My bonus hadn't changed much, perhaps a slight increase due to my hard work. But John's bonus was shockingly a digit less. He looked bitter, admitting it was about a third of the previous year. I hadn't heard of any significant downturn in his company or industry. So it was clear that the issue was with him. "You've been coming home late after nights out, sometimes hungover at work, and even oversleeping and being late, right? Maybe that's affecting your work?" I asked him cautiously. The point was that his attitude towards his work had become lax since we got married. It was evident from his day-to-day attitude that his work ethic had become lax. It was hard to believe that a husband constantly late due to his nightlife could be performing well at work. Maybe. The company's been tough, but I guess my next bonus will be back to normal. Despite my concern, he said it as if it were someone else's problem. His indifference was alarming, showing no intent to change his lifestyle or recover from the reduced bonus. Then, just a few weeks later, John didn't go to work. He had been out late the night before, and despite my attempts to wake him, he wouldn't get up. I left for work, saying, "I'm not dealing with this," but he never got up and went to work. He didn't even call in sick and just stayed in bed all day. When I came home and saw him still in bed, I was shocked. "Did you just skip work without notice?" His behavior was unacceptable, both as a husband and a professional. I couldn't wake up. I called in sick after the office reached out. Unbelievable. His company had to call because he didn't show up. And he showed no remorse for the trouble caused or the gap in his work. I felt hopeless about this changed man, so different from the person I married. "Do you realize what you've done? Your performance evaluation is down, you're always hungover or oversleeping, and now this unexcused absence. What if you get fired?" I was so worried about his future, our future, that I couldn't help but raise my voice. What John said next left me speechless. "Then we can just borrow money from your dad, right?" In that moment, everything went dark before my eyes. When did John become the kind of man who relies on my father's wealth? He promised my father he'd help me find happiness together. He said he was happy just being with me, enjoying a modest life. How foolish I was to believe I could be happy with him. Now, it's all about the money. Just like those in my past. Why do people always get blinded by money? Was it a mistake to introduce him to my father before we got married? I was overwhelmed with disappointment, regret, sadness, and various other emotions. If this continues, I might even consider divorce. John didn't change his behavior after that. He received a stern warning from his company and stopped taking unauthorized absences, but he didn't stop his flashy nightlife or wasteful spending. When he impulsively bought expensive brand shoes and bags without thinking, I felt fear about what would become of him. As I worried about my own life, months passed by. Then one day, my father suddenly passed away. It wasn't an accident or incident, but a sudden illness. Of course, his work colleagues and the media were in an uproar, and everything around me became busy instantly. I had lost my mother long ago and had no siblings. My father was my only family. I was too busy to even cry until after the funeral, but once everything settled, I was overwhelmed with a sense of loss and sadness. My father, always calm and wise despite his busy career in media work, raised me alone and had always been my role model. Whenever I felt like giving up during exams or job hunting, I was encouraged by his dedication and willingness to learn. He was only 66, too young to die. As I was grieving in my room, John barged in without knocking. He hardly helped with the funeral arrangements, just idly playing with his phone while I was busy handling everything. I was already resigned to his behavior and couldn't muster the energy to scold him. As I sat crying on my bed, he stood there without even squatting down to my level and asked, "Hey, how much is the inheritance?" It's all about the money again. I was too fed up to answer, but he came closer and shouted, "How many millions? He must have left a fortune, right? You're his only kin, so the inheritance comes to us, right?" His face bore a disgusting, greedy smile. Thinking he'd become a millionaire overnight now that my father was gone. He dreamt of a lavish life without working, and his drooling, despicable face filled me with revulsion. I told him without even looking at him, "There's no inheritance." He immediately yelled back, "That can't be true. He just died suddenly, he couldn't have spent it all." It's not that. I was a stepchild of my late mother. I'm not a real family member, so I can't inherit anything. $0. Just as I told him, I have no blood relation to my respected father. My father never publicized our family in the media, perhaps for this very reason. Lies. A stepchild? What's that? I've never heard this story before. He raised me until I became an adult, and we both cared for each other deeply. My mother passed away a long time ago. I just thought there was no need to mention it. There's nothing more to say to John. Instead of telling him to leave, I just sighed, and then he suddenly yelled so loudly it echoed through the room. You tricked me. Why do you think I've been sucking up to you and your father all these years? Give me back my last few years. What? I was stunned for a moment. What did he just say? Before I could ask, he started smashing everything on the table to the floor in a tantrum. Our couple's stuffed animals, the photo frame from our wedding, a mirror we bought on a trip, all our memories shattered with loud noises. You're so stupid. You probably thought I was a prince who fell for you without knowing anything about your father, right? It was all an act. A girl from our Spanish class recognized you and secretly told me everything. She said you'd probably been approached by guys after your father's money, so if I pretended not to know and played the pure love angle, you'd fall for it easily. I couldn't believe it. Unlike school or work, there's no need to expose one's identity in a hobby class, so I let my guard down. Since he never mentioned anything about my father in our French class, I believed he fell for me without knowing about him. He said I tricked him, but it turns out I was the one who was deceived. John clicked his tongue loudly. Damn it. How are you going to make this up to me? My life plan is ruined because of you. I've been acting like a good guy for 3 years, thinking I'd get an inheritance. Who would bother with an ugly old hag like you otherwise? He let loose now that his true colors were showing. I was so disillusioned, I had no energy left to argue back, my heart just turned cold. I was planning to divorce you once the inheritance was secure. I've been seeing someone for about a year now. I was going to marry her and build a nice house with the money, give her a life of luxury. His confession of lies and now an affair. I had to react. I looked up, my eyes wide, staring at him. What did you just say? A year ago? That's around the time we decided to get married. Yes. It's been almost a year since he proposed and we visited my father. You didn't start the affair because we got engaged, did you? Exactly. Who wouldn't want a young and beautiful partner? I had my eye on this girl for a while. Cute girls cost money, though. I couldn't afford her with my salary, so I had to secure our marriage. What a cunning plan. He used me and my father for his petty desires. All his nights out with friends or colleagues were probably dates with his affair. My heart pounded with anger, my fingers trembling with heat. My fingertips became hot and began to wince and tremble. Ah, what a loss. If there's no money, you're useless to me. We're getting a divorce. He spat out those words. I turned to him and calmly said, Of course. Who needs a man who deceived us and had an affair? Let's get divorced as soon as possible. And since you had an affair, I'll be claiming alimony. Reacting to the mention of money, he started to rage again. Alimony. I should be the one getting that. I've been the one deceived. And do you have any proof of the affair for the lawyers? Any photos? Recordings? You've got nothing, right? Despite feeling like my insides were boiling, I tried to remain composed as I spoke. You're right. Since I can't produce any evidence, alimony might be difficult. So I won't claim it. There's no inheritance, so there's no property to divide either. Just promise me you'll never involve yourself with me or my family again. That's enough for me. John responded with emotionless eyes. Fine, that works for me. I never want to deal with you again. With that, he left the room, deliberately slamming the door loudly behind him. Later that day, I asked him to sign the divorce papers and a reminder that he would not be involved with me in any way in the future, as we had discussed the day before, and we were easily divorced. Having lost both my father and husband in just a few days, I returned to my family home, feeling empty. My father's presence still lingered in his room, and I cried there once more. After my bereavement leave, I returned to work and started getting used to living alone at my family home. Gradually, my life returned to its peaceful routine. About 2 weeks later, my phone started ringing off the hook all day long. I set it to silent mode at work to avoid disturbing others and kept it in my locker, but at home, the constant calls were a nuisance. The caller was always John. I ignored him for several days, but he was so persistent that I decided to answer just once, hoping it would put an end to his incessant calls. As soon as I pressed the call button, John started yelling from the other side. "You really fooled me back then. There must be an inheritance after all. Why didn't you give it to me?" His loud, angry voice was so unpleasant that I instinctively moved the phone away from my ear. The TV in the room was broadcasting news. It was about the recently deceased attorney Smith, stating that his substantial inheritance was donated to non-profit organizations by his family. John must have seen this news and realized there was indeed an inheritance, and now he was furious. There was actually a bit of a lie in the story that there was no inheritance to be inherited because there was no blood relation. While I had no blood relation to my father, my parents did formalize an adoption when I was in elementary school. My father, a successful attorney, had prepared a will stating that all his inheritance would go to me. Of course, being drafted by a professional attorney, it was legally sound. When my father passed away, John was already living a wasteful and lazy life. I kept silent about the inheritance to prevent him from squandering it without working. And what about that amount? $4 million. With that money, you could have lived comfortably for the rest of your life. Why did you keep quiet, you idiot? We were already divorced, so he, now a stranger, had no claim to the money. He was furious and regretful for missing out on such a large sum. That's the problem with you. You don't work seriously but are obsessed with other people's money. I wouldn't want to give you a single penny. As I firmly stated this, John made a pitiful noise on the other end. Come on, did you really donate all of it? Didn't you keep a little for yourself? As he continued to be unrelentingly stubborn, I answered. I really donated every single penny. There's no money left from my father. There was an obvious click of his tongue from the other end. You're really stupid. Why would you donate it? You could have had a good life if you kept it. Ah, well. Good thing I divorced a dumb woman like you. With those parting words, John hung up unilaterally. Finally, the storm had passed. I took a deep breath and blocked his number. After that, John, shocked by the loss of the inheritance he had been counting on, started drinking every day, and naturally, his work performance and attitude at his company worsened even more. Furthermore, John's marriage to me for inheritance and our quick divorce after my father's death became known at his company, further lowering his reputation as a person. Meanwhile, I tried using social media on a whim to look into John's mistress and quickly found her account. It seems John had been acting lavishly towards her, counting on my father's inheritance, but now he couldn't afford to treat her well after everything was gone. Reading her post saying, "The guy I was dating divorced his wife, but lately he keeps saying he has no money, no gifts, no dinners. I was with him for the luxury, but now I think I'll break up." I held my aching head. It seems John was after our money, and his mistress was after his. They were all money-hungry, classless people. With a straight face, I closed the page, deciding never to look at it again. About 3 weeks after our last phone call, an unexpected visitor came to my office. A staff member came to fetch me, looking troubled, and in the hallway stood a much paler John. "What do you want, showing up at my office?" I asked in a stern voice, and John looked at me with a sycophantic smile, laughing. After thinking, "Your bonus went up when mine went down, right? So, you must have some savings, even without your father's inheritance?" I was stunned, not expecting him to bring up my money. "I'm in debt now because of all the shopping and drinking on credit. If this continues, I'll be in trouble. Can you help me out a little? Please? He pleaded, clasping his hands. Just when I thought he had finally given up on my father's inheritance, he now shamelessly comes asking for my savings. I almost felt dizzy from his audacity. Of course not, I said directly. Every time you look at someone, it's money, money, money. I'm so fed up. If you want money that badly, work hard, save, and earn it yourself. Don't make such an ugly face. You're really hideous. Want to know how much I owe? $40,000. The girl I wanted to marry recently dumped me for being stingy. I'm at rock bottom. Can't you help out just a bit? He continued to beg pathetically. He had lost both money and women and was now just pitiful. That's your own selfish debt. You handle it. It's really a nuisance, so please leave right now. As our voices rose, employees and security guards gathered around. They knew my father and had seen John at our wedding. My boss, who had rushed over, had security guard escort John out, and he assured me he'd make sure John couldn't enter the office again. My boss expressed anger toward my ex-husband, saying, "It's unacceptable that someone as humble and hardworking as you has to suffer because of a terrible husband." He sympathized with me while openly showing his disdain for my ex. Furthermore, he praised my diligent and accurate work performance, assuring me that he would positively influence my next evaluation. John's life, already a mess, worsened as he started being late and absent without notice, eventually getting fired. Without any savings, he couldn't pay his rent or living expenses and ended up homeless. His health declined from excessive drinking, and with his disheveled appearance, he couldn't secure a stable job. He managed to find a live-in part-time job and is slowly paying off his debt. For years, he deceived a woman and flew into a rage when things didn't go his way. Unable to manage himself properly, always taking the easy way out and indulging his whims. Such a self-centered and childish man is now forced to grit his teeth and endure a constrained life. As for me, I still have something hidden from John. The apartment in downtown I'm living in, inherited from my father, is quite valuable. After living here for a while, I plan to sell it when I find a new place or meet a new partner. Also, while I did donate the inheritance as I told John, it wasn't the full amount. My father's will stated, "Feel free to use it, but keep some for yourself too." Knowing my interest in helping children worldwide, my father seemed to have foreseen my donation. I won't betray my dear father. So I kept a quarter of the inheritance for myself. It is $1 million in my account. Of course, I won't use it for brand name items to look good or for fun that has no residual value. I want to use it carefully for my future.